My name is Sophia Carter, and the night my sister's boyfriend called me unemployed across a dinner table was the moment he unknowingly became the motivation behind the biggest transformation of my life. Because sometimes the people who underestimate you are the same people who push you toward the future they could never imagine. At the time, my life looked unimpressive from the outside, and if someone had walked past my small apartment, they would have seen nothing extraordinary. Just a quiet woman working late into the night with a laptop on a kitchen table that doubled as a desk, a place where dreams existed quietly without witnesses. 6 months earlier, I had walked away from a stable corporate career that most people considered successful, a position with a steady income and predictable promotions. But the truth was that every morning I felt like I was slowly becoming someone I didn't recognize anymore. I had spent years helping wealthy clients grow their investments while secretly realizing that the financial world was built in a way that left ordinary people confused and dependent. And somewhere along the way, I decided that I wanted to build something different, something simpler, something honest. But quitting meant uncertainty, and uncertainty looks like failure to people who are afraid of risk, especially people like Jason. Jason entered our family like a loud announcement that never ended, confident in a way that made him believe he understood success better than everyone else, always talking about money, promotions, and status as if those things defined a person's worth. He liked expensive restaurants and strong opinions, and he spoke in the kind of tone that suggested he was always right, even when no one asked him to be. The first time we met, he shook my hand and said, "So, you work in finance. That must be competitive." I nodded politely. He said, "I like competitive environments," as if that sentence alone proved something. Back then, I didn't think much about him. He was just my sister's boyfriend, temporary, unimportant. Or so I thought. Everything changed at that Sunday dinner. My parents had prepared one of their traditional meals, the kind that filled the house with familiar smells and comfortable conversations, and everyone gathered around the table pretending life followed simple paths. Jason arrived wearing a tailored jacket and confidence that filled the room before he even spoke. He greeted everyone loudly, shook hands, made jokes, told stories about his work, and eventually he turned to me. "So, Sophia, what are you doing these days?" It sounded like a casual question, but it wasn't. It was an invitation for judgment. I answered calmly, "I'm working on a project." He smiled. "What kind of project?" "An online platform." "For what?" "Financial education." He laughed, not quietly, not politely, loud enough that everyone heard. "Financial education from someone without a job?" My sister tried to change the subject, but Jason continued. "You know what they say," he said. "If you can't succeed in the real world, you start teaching." No one spoke. My father looked uncomfortable. My mother stared at her plate, and Jason leaned back in his chair like he had just delivered wisdom. "You should consider getting back into the workforce," he said. "Unemployment isn't a long-term plan." I felt the words land, but I didn't react, because reacting would have given him what he wanted. Instead, I simply said, "I'm exactly where I need to be." He smiled again, in that condescending way. I doubt that. That night, I left early, not dramatically, just quietly. The drive home felt longer than usual, streetlights passing like slow thoughts, and somewhere between one red light and the next, I realized something important. I wasn't angry, I was focused, because for the first time I wanted to prove something, not to Jason, but to myself, and that's when the real work began. Every morning started before sunrise. Coffee, laptop, notes, plans, failures, adjustments. The platform was simple in concept, but complicated in execution. Clear lessons, simple language, real examples, no unnecessary complexity. I tested everything myself, every page, every feature, every lesson. Some days progress felt invisible, other days problems felt endless, but slowly it improved. Weeks became months and months became momentum. The first real breakthrough came late one night when I checked the user dashboard and saw that 1,000 people had signed up, strangers who trusted something I had built from nothing. I stared at the number for a long time, not celebrating, just absorbing the reality. It was working, not perfectly, but genuinely. And from that point forward, growth became steady, not explosive but reliable, the kind of growth that builds strong foundations instead of temporary excitement. 6 months later, the platform crossed 10,000 users, a number that meant nothing to Jason, but everything to me, because 10,000 people represented 10,000 decisions to trust something new, and trust is the most valuable currency in business. Opportunities followed, emails arrived, partnership requests, investor inquiries, speaking invitations, each one a reminder that the quiet months of work had created something real. But I stayed careful. Growth without direction leads to collapse, so every decision mattered. Every partnership required thought, every expansion required planning. By the end of the first year, the company had an office, small, bright, efficient. 12 employees who believed in the mission, 12 people who worked not just for salaries but for something meaningful. And still, Jason knew nothing until the next family dinner. Exactly 1 year later, same house, same table, different story. Jason greeted me confidently. "So, Sophia, still unemployed?" I smiled. "No." He nodded sarcastically. "What do you do now?" "I run a company." He laughed until he realized I wasn't joking, and then everything changed. Because sometimes the loudest people become the quietest when reality interrupts their assumptions. Jason asked questions, more carefully now. "How big is it?" "Growing." "How many employees?" 12. "How many users?" 50,000. And for the first time since I met him, Jason had nothing to say. The conversation moved on, but the balance had shifted. Respect had arrived. Quietly, naturally. I didn't celebrate, because real success doesn't need witnesses, it only needs consistency. 2 years after that first dinner, the company expanded internationally. 3 years later, it reached hundreds of thousands of users. 4 years later, it became profitable beyond anything I imagined. And somewhere along the way, Jason stopped making jokes, because reality has a way of correcting arrogance. My name is Sophia Carter, and sometimes the best response to disrespect is patience.